That's what we're finding out about these particles. We say, did it take root A? We can eliminate it experimentally. Did it take root B? We can eliminate that experimentally. Did it take both? We can eliminate that. Did it take neither? We can eliminate that. All that leaves us with is going this route that we go with the number 5. Oh, I see. Although in this case it's astonishing. With the case of the number 5, it was easy. What this must be telling us is that it somehow fails to make sense even to raise the question in a situation like this. Which route did the particle take?
This is just to break down your prejudice that says a particle is a particle. You got to understand it's a particle and a wave. Now that you've taken that leap, let's get one step closer to the reality. It ain't either of those either. And it's both at the same time.
I studied biochemistry at Rutgers University and then went to chiropractic college at Life University in Atlanta, Georgia. My postgraduate training is in anatomy and physiology, neurochemistry, neurophysiology, and genetics. I like the placebo effect because it has to do with a person's acceptance. It's really what it's about. For example, they took these group of people that had Parkinson's disease, and in Parkinson's disease there's a problem in the brain with making dopamine. There's a little nuclei called a substantia nigra that stops making dopamine. So they took a group of people that had Parkinson's disease and they said to them, now listen, we have this injection. It's going to make you better. Well, 50% of the people that got the injection all of a sudden lost all their motor dysfunction. In other words, they weren't pill rolling, they weren't shuffling their feet anymore, they didn't have intention tremors when they were grabbing for objects. So the doctor said, well, that's a great example of a placebo, it's all in your mind. But when they checked the dopamine levels that were produced in the brain, the interesting thing that happened was that the brain started making dopamine because they accepted that they were well. In other words, their thought that they were well allowed them to begin to be well. And if you're being well in the quantum field, the observer has to supply the chemistry to match who you're being. And who gives the orders for the signaling and from the brain all the way to the receptor site is our own personal attitude. Now, they'll tell you, if you read any scientific text, that genetics causes diseases. Genetics cause disease. And then recently, science now says, well, no, it's not genetics that causes disease. It's the environment that stimulates the genetics that cause disease. But what I'm saying is, it's our reaction to the environment that stimulates the effects of genetics that causes disease in the human body. So if we change our attitude, that means we're going to change the effects neurochemically, which means we're going to change our effects biologically, which means we're going to change the effects of the receptor site, which means we're going to change the expression of DNA, which means we're going to change the expression of protein, which means we're going to change the expression of life, which means we're going to change the health of the physical body. So our attitude literally has an effect on a cellular level. People who make up their mind about anything, whether they are given a prognosis of terminal cancer, whether they're given a prognosis of a certain health malady that's going to take a certain amount of time, the person who makes up their mind, and that is a great definition of the frontal lobe, when you make up your mind about something, you're overcoming the body, you're overcoming the enforcement from the environment, and you're overcoming time.
In fact, if you've listened and have remembered anything that I've said, your physiology is different than it was before that. That is something that Eric Kandel, the recent winner of the Nobel Prize in Medicine and Science, said very eloquently at a talk, that basically memory has been encoded, your genetic structure has changed, and while we previously would talk about the nervous system as this very rigid thing that didn't have much capacity for change, we now know that on many levels that isn't true. And actually there's a tremendous amount of plasticity, which basically means ability to change within the nervous system.
And if you look at the structure of the human brain in detail, you see that it's specifically designed, it's carefully engineered to experience the unified field, to experience the unity of life.
here we are actually filming great thinkers. Everyone in this room is a great thinker. Now that we got them thinking, that's always a trick, isn't it?
Science suggests to us that parallel universes are living simultaneously, that we're living 100,000 lives, or 5 lives, you know, however much you can handle, simultaneously, and that all the things that we do are at work right now.
I agree.
The idea of who you are with, where you live, what you look like, what you wear, who you talk to today, what you're going to do tomorrow, you have all created this as fundamentally your reality. So everybody in your life is an aspect of yourself, and what you did is you simply added to it. You added a new reality to that mix. So we're so busy being it. It's like the fish in the ocean. Somebody gives the idea to the fish that it's a novel idea to ask for a drink of water. So the fish asks for a drink of water, and everybody starts laughing, because the fish is in the water. So it's sort of like saying, how do I create my reality? Well, you are the reality. You're already creating it. We only see what we are when we step out of it, and we look back at who we've been.
My existence is the best example of creating your own reality. Doesn't that make sense?
Tell us.
Well, growing up deaf, people have a different conception of how or who you should be. You're deaf, we should feel sorry for you. You need extra attention. You need extra schooling. You need extra care. You need to be looked after. Poor thing, she's deaf. And for myself, I looked at it in a normal way. I had and decided I would have a happy childhood.
It's tricky. I don't know if you want to go there. You do want to go there? So, entanglement is space separated and time separated. One way of looking very specifically at the time separation aspect, it's much easier to do this with one individual rather than two. Because who are you better entangled with than anyone? It's yourself. It's your future self that you're entangled with, and your past self. So the experiment that I developed to look at this is we wire you up typically to look at skin conductance, but also heart rate and other parameters. You will sit in front of a computer screen and you press a button, and you know that 5 seconds later you're going to see a picture. It could be a very calm picture, or it might be a very emotional picture. And it's randomly selected by the computer immediately before it's shown. So when you press the button, the future is not yet determined. So you need real precognition in order to be able to jump into the future and get it somehow. So since we're looking at your physiology, we know what happens to physiology after you see an emotional image, and we know what happens after you see a calm image. The question is, does that future experience leak into your present? Does it happen before you see the picture? And through this experiment, you can see what happens. Electrical activity of the heart, EKG. This is photoplethysmograph, which is the amount of blood in the fingertip. And respiration, breathing in, breathing out. Press the button, well, what happens to physiology? Well, if it starts rising before the image appears, it may suggest that you're about to get an emotional picture. And if it stays calm, it suggests maybe you're going to get a calm picture. So we've done this kind of experiment for several hundred people, and colleagues have run this experiment as well, and as it turns out, that is exactly what you see. People become aroused before randomly selected pictures in the future that happen to be emotional, and they remain calm before randomly selected pictures that are calm. This has been seen in heart rate changes, in skin conductance, in the brain, and basically systemically throughout the body. We are entangled with our future selves.